Welcome back to Guiding Bolt and part 2 of our How to Refinish a Kitchen Table project. If you haven't already seen part 1, be sure to check that out. Otherwise, let's dive right into the final 2 steps of our project, Step 3 staining and Step 4 sealing.
Once you finish sanding the surface all the way up to a 220 grit, it's time to prep our wood for staining. We're going to take our mineral spirits and coat the entire surface. And what this does is it helps prepare the wood to accept the stain, but it does so in a way that will make the staining a little bit more even. I'd recommend only doing half of the table or a leaf or a leg at a time. That way you can go ahead and stain and clean that up as you move along. But another reason why we use the mineral spirits before we put the stain on is it gives us a good indication of the wet wood, which helps us see potential swirl marks that may have been left over from sanding. If you find any swirls or pigtail marks after taking a close look, you can even use a flashlight from the side of your wood. You want to stop and go back and re-sand because those swirl marks will show up very clearly when you stain. And once you get to that point, there's not much you can do about it. So double check your surface before you stain. The second part of our project involves staining the wood and then sealing it with a protective coat. The items you will need for this stage of our project is an oil-based stain. I picked out this Minwax wood finish. This one supposedly dries in 2 hours, resists lapping for even color, and has rich color in one coat. And we wanted a bit of a darker color, so we went with the semi-transparent Mocha 280. But you can pick whatever color you want. Remember to test the stain on a test piece of wood that matches the wood that you're using, or test it on an inconspicuous area of the table to make sure you like the color first. For applying the wood stain, you can use a natural bristle brush or a rag. Honestly, an old cotton t-shirt works great for applying stain. For a protective coat, we're going to want a polyurethane. I went with the Minwax Fast Drying Clear Semi-Gloss. And for applying this, you're going to want a quality natural bristle brush. The higher quality brush you have here, the better and smoother your finish is going to be. And then again, we'll want to have 220 sanding discs for a random orbit sander. We will be sanding in between our coats of polyurethane to help make sure that that finish is smooth and even. Reminder, we always want to be safe when we're working with equipment. You're going to want to have, gloves to protect your hands, eye protection, harmful chemicals and vapors again here. You want to make sure you have great cross ventilation. Highly recommend a respirator. The other thing you need to remember when using these oil-based products is that you cannot just dispose of your rags. Do not wad them up, throw them in the corner of your garage. Do not wad them up and throw them in your trash can. The products that are in these are highly combustible, and you can accidentally start a fire because what happens as the chemicals in here dry off, they actually go through a chemical process of oxidation and can instantly combust. So what you want to do as soon as you're done using your rags or your brushes is you want to clean them off right away with mineral spirits or dispose of them properly. And how you do that is you can take your dirty rags and put them in a metal container, submerge them with water, sink them to the bottom with a rock or a brick or something, and then seal that metal container with a metal lid.
Then you can take that to your waste disposal center to dispose of it properly. The second option is to take those rags and lay them flat out on a surface. You want it to be outside, not in direct sunlight, and that surface needs to be non-combustible, so like soil or a concrete sidewalk. Don't lay them out on your deck or anything like that. Allow them to dry completely so that they kind of harden up, and then they're safe to dispose of in the trash can. But they must be fully dry first.
Before using our stain, we want to mix it up to make sure that the color particles are mixed throughout the liquid. But we don't want to shake the can to do that because that'll introduce air bubbles into it, which might come up weird on our surface when we're staining. It's best to use a stick to stir the container up. So you can use a paint stick, or this is just a wooden yardstick to do so. And you just want to gently stir it and then kind of pick up the sediment that's at the bottom to get it mixed in. Once your stain is mixed up and ready to go, you can take your rag or your old cotton t-shirt, get some stain on it, and then we're just going to start rubbing it into the wood, going in the direction of the grain. And we want to be liberal with this process as we're going along, and make sure we cover all the spots. And you'll notice that I'm kind of overlapping my passes as I go to blend it in. And once I get the whole surface covered, I'm then going to go back with a dry rag and rub the surface off to pick up any extra stain that's kind of left on the surface. And that'll help it dry out quicker. But you're welcome to wait before doing that. The longer you kind of let it soak in, the darker your color is going to be.
Once you've stained the whole surface and then gone back over with a rag and wiped off the excess stain, it's time to wait and let it dry. Once it finishes drying, that depends upon your climate. It could take a few hours up to a few days. I'd recommend a few days just to make sure that it is completely dry. You can then determine if the color is what you want. If it's not, you can go ahead and apply another coat of stain to make it darker. And if it is just the way you want it, then you can move on to sealing it.
Once the stain on our table has finished drying and we've wiped the entire surface with a clean cloth, it's time to move to our final step of sealing our table with a semi-clear polyurethane finish. Just like with the stain, we want to make sure that we use some sort of stick to stir up the contents of our sealant. We do not want to shake it. We basically want to lift the particles from the bottom of the can and stir them in. Using tape will allow us to pour this out of the canister and keep the edge and rim clean.
Apply the polyurethane in smooth brush strokes. Unlike previous steps in our process, we do not want to be liberal here. Tap off the excess liquid from your brush before applying it to the table surface to help you make even passes. As always, make sure you go in the direction of the grain. Once you've made a few passes with the brush across the table, you want to go back across the entire length of the table with long, smooth brush strokes to help even everything out. Remember, the polyurethane can run down the sides of the table, so keep an eye out for drips and use your brush to help smooth things out before it dries. After doing a coat or two of the polyurethane finish, it's going to start to look close to done. Now remember, we will want to sand before we do our final coat.
You can choose to do 2 layers of polyurethane, sand, and then do your final 3rd coat. When you sand, it's going to turn the surface white and look like this. You want to make sure that you use like a microfiber cloth or a tack cloth and then get this as clean as possible. It won't be quite as clean looking as the side that's unsanded, but you want to get as much of this up as possible. And then when you do that final 3rd coat, any kind of slight white cast that might be left over after you've thoroughly cleaned it will disappear with that 3rd coat. After giving your polyurethane a week or 2 to dry and harden all the way, you can reassemble your table and bring it up to the dining room. Congratulations on finishing your table refinishing project. I hope you enjoy your new to you dining table. We'll see you guys back here next week.